afternoon, everybody. My name is Alexis Giovanetti, and today I'll be discussing why safe staffing actually saves lives. Here's my audience.
Hi, I'm Garrett.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
Hi, I'm Carmen.
All right. So I'm sure a lot of us have had a sick family member or even one of ourselves in the past. So imagine you bring your family member over to the hospital because of a new onset of an acute condition. So of course we expect the hospital staff to provide adequate and safe care to our family member, but you actually visit your family member and you notice them like this. So what if I told you that your nurse just had way too many patients and could not provide a good amount of time to your patient to prevent this fall from happening? So one preventable mistake can actually change everything. An unsafe amount of patients for a staff assignment ratio can actually account for preventable medical errors and poor patient conditions due to chronic understaffing. So my experience as a nurse shows my passion about this topic because I can definitely advocate for my fellow nurses when I say we are critically understaffed and constantly overworked. So I'm saying this because if we implement safe ratios, we can actually enhance patient safety, decrease preventable medical errors, and improve overall patient satisfaction. So what is an unsafe ratio and why does it put the patient at risk? An unsafe ratio is when a nurse has way too many patients to provide an adequate amount of time to create a safe environment. These unsafe ratios can affect the outcome and the nurse's overall well-being. So for every additional patient, we see a 7% increased mortality within 30 days of admission. And yes, when I say mortality, I mean death. And a 23% increase in the odds of nurse burnout, and a 15% increase in the odds of job dissatisfaction. This was discussed by Linda Aiken with the JAMA Network, and I say this because this all correlates with the nursing shortage and shows that these nurses are overall unhappy. So, chronic understaffing is related to the burnout, the emotional distress, and the heavy workloads of these nurses. So NCSBN posts a workforce survey every year, and in 2024, they showed that 40% of nurses plan to leave by 2029. So that's a potential 1.6 million loss of nurses overall in just the United States. And this can be shown through protests and strikes that you might see online, but these hospitals are not listening to us, and we feel very ignored. So let's implement a safer ratio. How can we do that? Well, California, through the DPE 2011 fact sheet, shows that they have a ratio here. So with critical care, we have a 2-to-1 ratio, which means that for every 2 patients, we have 1 nurse. Labor and delivery has a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 patients for every 1 nurse, and so forth. So this shows a 13.9% fewer surgical deaths compared to New Jersey, and only 10% compared to Pennsylvania. So I mentioned these 2 states from this DPE 2011 fact sheet because these 2 states do not have mandates themselves. So the statistic is based on every extra patient, and that extra 1 patient can make a difference. Again, these are mortalities. These are more deaths that we're seeing. And these nurses are also less likely to experience burnout, job dissatisfaction, and intentions of leaving the workforce. So this is showing that the nursing shortage can be affected if we don't have these safe ratios. So we might say, Alexis, it's too expensive to hire all these nurses. These hospitals are already experiencing such a financial distress, so how can we pay more nurses? Well, if we have more nurses, we see less medication errors. We see less falls, hospital-acquired infections, and pressure injuries. So preventing harm costs less than treating it. So here's how. We have the AHRQ from 2016. They show the hospital-acquired conditions. So for all of these, we see an additional $600 to $48,000. And this is including pressure injuries, falls, ventilator-associated pneumonia, C. diff, and catheter-associated UTIs, These are all conditions that we're developing in the hospital setting. So these were not conditions that the patients experienced prior to coming in. So we're seeing this extra cost just because these nurses don't have enough time to care adequately for these patients. So the harm to the patients is expensive, and legal and risk management teams actually have to get involved to show that these are, because of the hospital and the short staffing. And insurance is not going to pay for this because it's proven through documentation and assessment findings from the nurses and providers that this developed over time in the hospital. So I say this because we can implement those mandated staff ratios to improve overall patient outcome and prevent medical errors, and the lack of ratio compromises patient safety, overall outcome, nurse well-being, and it's way more costly. So instead of initially what that patient looked like, your family member can look like this instead. Because when nurses have time to care, patients have time to heal. And we can see safer patients, healthier nurses, and better hospitals. So overall, let's implement these ratios. Thank you so much.
That is very informative.
Thank you.